everyone.
We're here today at yesterday's auto gallery.
Yes. We're going to see some cool cars, interview some cool people.
And I just want you guys to know I parked backwards, so I'm preparing for today.
Yeah, we're ready.
We are car ready, so let's go.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are in Edmonton at yesterday's Auto Gallery, and we are speaking with Ted Dakin, the general manager of Yesterday Auto Gallery Foundation.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Great. Good to have you here.
Awesome. We're so excited to be here.
Good.
You can't totally see it all right now, but oh my goodness, it's filled with cool cars and motorcycles and just a whole bunch of fun stuff. So we will show you all a little bit later, but to start off, we will get you to tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So I've been with the foundation, the gallery, for almost 2 years, and prior to that, I was in the media industry with the newspaper side of things for quite a few years, and have rattled around in the retail industry for a while. And this is definitely the funnest job I've ever had.
Yay.
I'll be frank. It is great, as you can imagine. It's like working in a toy store if you're a kid. And you know, I'm just really enjoy the fact that this is a not-for-profit environment. So everything we get, it goes towards preservation of the cars, and we get to work with other nonprofits to help them raise funds and do great things as well. So it's a very fulfilling type of role. Yeah.
May I ask what the switch was? Because you said you were originally in media and the newspaper.
Oh.
So what caused that switch to come work here?
Partially because I was bought out, which is good. But you know, that particular part of the industry, which was newspapers predominantly, was quite disrupted. So as most traditional media, whether it be print, radio, television, print was definitely the most disrupted, and the organization that I worked for was quite disrupted by it. So it was time for me to move on, and I landed in this kind of. I didn't know the owner. His name is Glenn Stennebaugh. He owns the building and all the cars, and started the foundation. So I had not met Glenn before, and we met once. He brought me here, and I looked at the place and I said, "Holy mackerel! Number one, why don't I know this exists in the city?" And you know, had no idea what he was doing, and he kind of surprised me with it. And we talked for a bit, and I thought, you know what, it'd be kind of interesting to work here and run this place and do, you know, events and have fun and watch people enjoy. It's really really neat.
Yeah. So what is yesterday's Auto Gallery?
So we operate as a museum, just like any other. We do operate as a not-for-profit. So essentially that means that any monies that we get go towards internal costs, such as maintenance of the cars, heat, lights, that sort of thing. So we're not a registered nonprofit, but we do operate as a not-for-profit. So Glenn has been a car collector all his life. I'm told that he had a couple of cars when he was 14. Not sure if he was driving them or not at the time, but and definitely has a passion for cars, and started a collection. Glenn has owned a number of pretty sizable businesses in the Edmonton area for a lot of years, and this is both his passion and also a investment. So most of these cars that he's acquired have been restored already as is, and you know, the value of these cars accumulates over time, and so it's a great investment for him as well. And the benefit is that as a museum that's open to the public, it's the largest collection of classic cars in Canada that you can go see as, you know, you or I can walk in, pay $20 and go see 120 cars. So you know, he's always been a real philanthropist over the years. Has given away a lot of money to causes that he believes in. And this is not taking away from that necessarily. It's just something that he thinks is important. You could buy a warehouse, put your cars in it, and nobody ever gets to see them, or you can do what he does, which is make it available for the public. And it's incredible what you see in people's experience when they come here. It's fascinating to watch, whether they're seniors that used to own a car like that or know those cars, to even young people who probably have never seen a classic car unless they've been to a car show or something. So it's really kind of cool. Yeah.
Is there one moment in particular that kind of sticks out to you as a really memorable experience with a patron?
I would say, and not one specific time other than numerous times where people have broken down to tears. And when I say tears, I'm not talking sadness. I'm talking just, it triggered some kind of emotion or memory probably of time gone by. Maybe it was a spouse that owned the car like that, and that person is no longer with us. So that can really pull on the strings a bit. We do a lot of, I would say, very important private events, 80th, 90th birthdays. We've done weddings here as an event, and those are wonderful experiences because people have chosen to have them here, and they're actually awfully fun to attend as someone who's hosting the event or working on behalf of them. But it's a lot of great experiences and a lot of emotion, and I think that's what's most interesting about it is it's not just a car, it's got a story behind it, whether it's its own story or maybe it's a story of some experience someone else has had with a car like that. So it can really evolve. So, yeah.
And I imagine too, individuals, those who are willing to share at least, you get a lot of stories when people come in to visit and talk with each other and the volunteers here and all that. So
I mean, we get the common questions and common comments. One major one is, boy, I wish I hadn't sold that car. Why didn't I keep that car? That sort of thing, which is very common. Of course, they didn't keep it because it was time to get a new car, and who knew that car that you spent $6,000 for 40 years ago is worth $100,000 now, or whatever it's worth. We get people come in, and the first thing they want to do is show you their car. So out comes the phone. I know it's coming. Here comes the phone. Okay, I'm going to see someone's car, and you know what? It's pleasant to do that because they're just so excited to be here, and I guess in a way it kind of makes them feel like, which is true, they're kind of a collector, and often these are very nice cars that people have done one of. It's their car, it's the only one they have, and they may have restored it themselves, or often it's, it was my dad's car, my grandpa's car, I inherited it, or I took it and restored it, and that sort of thing. So I get lots of great stories from people who are not involved in these cars. As I said before, each one of these cars has a great story. Some of them we know a lot of detail about. They're either very well documented, or we know the history of the car beyond when it was built and all those numbers. More so, this person owned it, it came from here, he bought it day one and kept it till he didn't need it anymore, or passed away or something. So there's always great stories, and we love to hear other people's stories too, of course. We might even share them sometimes, make them ours.
Take your change a little bit. I'm
No.
just kidding.
Yeah.
How many cars are in the gallery?
Right now there's 115, and normally our full capacity, if we took every spot, including all the cars up on the risers and so on, is about 120. We have in the past taken in storage cars over the winter, up to about 20 of them, I think, and this year we did as well. But now we won't be able to do that moving forward, I don't believe, because the museum, Glen, has acquired at least 20 cars this year. So anything that would have been taken up by a storage car is now more likely to be one of his cars. So always lots of cars, and there's more cars than there's room, which means we circulate the cars quite often. We do exhibits, particular cars sometimes, like we're doing today. We have World War II, some World War II vehicles, some military vehicles with historical past that are here. They're not our vehicles. They're another group called Valor Park. They're an Edmonton association, so they are bringing them in, and it's a celebration of the 80th anniversary of D-Day, which is actually today. Today is June the 6th, by the way.
This might not air on June 6th, but when it comes out.
This is now in the past.
Yeah.
But so the 8th, which is a Saturday, we're doing an event for that. And so, that sort of thing, it's a little different. You can come here once every 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months and hopefully see something you didn't see before, or maybe it's an event, we have Elvis in, or, military vehicles, or we do a lot of fundraisers. I think I mentioned before, a couple weeks ago we did a dunk tank with MS And it's a particular fella who is a fundraiser for MS, and so he wanted, he'd been bugging me for 6 months to do a dunk tank, and I said, we have to do it when it's warm enough, because we can't have it in here. And we did that a couple weekends ago, and it was just kind of fun, you know, and they raised a few bucks, and I think we probably saw some people that might not normally come here. And yeah, at this stage of the game, I think if you asked 100 people out in the street how many knew about us, I would say probably 20 might know that we exist. So we enjoy doing events, brings people in for the first time, and they tell a few friends and so on. So that's the good part of it.
For sure. How long has the gallery been open?
We officially reopened, I'll say, in April of 2022. The gallery had opened in the spring of 2020, but had shut down after the summer due to COVID.
Gotcha.
So then it sat for the entire winter and reopened again the following year. So, sorry, that would have been 2021. But yeah, so not very long, but long enough that finally people are starting to know that we exist. So. Yeah.
And don't worry, we have a social media person who will make all the TikToks and things. So
take
a
us
lot
viral.
of folks will know, because with this amount of beautiful cars, and I will be honest, I know nothing about cars, like nothing. I can barely drive them, okay? But they are so pretty and cool to look at that I will definitely be coming back with my dad and my siblings, because they will be very excited to see all of this.
Good.
Speaking more of the collection, though, what is the value of the collection, if that's an okay question?
Yeah, I think right now the estimated value of the collection is probably somewhere between 12 and 15 million, I would think. And you know, but that varies between cars that might be worth $25,000 or $30,000, which are nice cars, maybe not so rare, maybe not perfect, you know, towards the $1 million plus group of cars. So when you combine them all, that's probably about what they're worth. But it's, you know, you'd have to kind of do an appraisal on every single car on a daily basis, because those prices fluctuate based on what else is sold. You know, if one particular car that we had, there was only 4 in the world and one caught fire and then there was only 3, all of a sudden that car is worth more, or maybe something sold at an auction somewhere for a super high price, which would bring all the other ones up to that price. So there's variables there, but somewhere in that zone. Yeah.
And for folks who want to come visit, what are your hours of operation?
We are open Wednesday to Saturday from 10 till 5, and that's both the gallery and the diner. So we have a Retros 50s diner here called Silves Retro Diner, and it's a very cool little place. It's one of the busiest restaurants on a Saturday, so I'll just put a little warning. Sometimes if we're super busy, we get a waiting list going, which we have a very nice waiting room, as you can see behind me, so it's not so bad if you had to wait half an hour to get a table. But and occasionally we're open on Sundays. Father's Day this year, we're open on Sunday. That may be in the past already, depending on when this airs, but next year we'll be open on that Sunday as well. And we try and do, maybe once every couple of months, we might do a special event on a Sunday, just so that it gives people who are working during the week an opportunity. So, yeah.
Do you have a favorite car in the gallery?
I do. Actually, my favorite car is a 1959 Pontiac Star Chief. That's just down the row here. It's green. I don't know if you can see it down there, but you know, it's definitely not the most valuable car in the gallery. It's probably one of the lower valued cars in the gallery, but we talked about stories before, and this car has a wonderful story. So it was bought in 1959 by a fellow who lived in Pennsylvania. And he drove the car, owned the car, all the way up till, I believe it was 2020-ish, or 2021 when he passed. So the car was purchased by another collector, who then, unfortunately, he passed away as well, and we ended up buying it along with some other cars from that collection. So we ended up with this car. So this fella kept the car for all those years, drove it. It has about, I think, 93,000 miles on it, which is a couple 100,000 kilometers-ish. So it was a well-driven car. But it, you know, from 5 feet away, the car looks brand spanking new, inside and out. And it's, I would refer to it, and I guess technically it's referred to as a survivor car. So it's never been restored, it's never been repainted, it's had mechanical work done to it as any car would. They're all, you know, brakes need to be done every however many miles, and they do wear out, so things wear out. But the interior is exclusive of the carpet, which was replaced, is 100% original. The paint, as far as we know, is 100% original. So it's, I just really have a lot of respect for someone that could keep a car for that long and drive it as much as he did, and it's still pristine. You know, it's unimaginable. So for that reason, that's one of my favorite cars. I'm not a big muscle car guy. I didn't grow up in that era. So I know I'm much more familiar with the more modern cars, but in here that's pretty much my favorite.
What sets yesterday's apart from other car shows and things?
Well, the car shows are typically in the summer, of course, and as much as we're a 200-day-a-year kind of car show, it's more of, it's different, not better, not worse, and it's more of a collaboration because we support the car clubs as much as we possibly can because they have been very supportive of us ever since we've opened. They were kind of the first groups to come and see us and pay admission and eat at our diner and that sort of thing. So we do collaborate with them a lot, but some of the shows in the summer are massive. So, you know, we've got 120 cars. You can go to, there's a big show at Reynolds Museum every year, and I think they had 600 cars last year. So it's, you know, from a quantity perspective, and typically very lovely cars as well, you know, you'll see much more at a car show. So I highly recommend in the summer you go and see a car show. But, you know, when it's minus 20, that's kind of where we come in.
You don't really want to go outside to a car show on minus 20.
Yeah, and we do our own car show along with Alberta Parkinson's Association in June each year. And it's an indoor-outdoor, so we probably have about 250 cars maybe in total. So it's a decent-sized show. But it's, again, we're really intended to be that an indoor event activity type of environment, unlike a car show, which is turn it on, turn it off kind of thing. So, yeah.
Looking forward more into the future, where do you hope to see yesterday's, say, 5 years from now?
I would like to see them paying the bills, meaning that we're making enough to pay for absolutely every expense that we have. Would be a great goal to have. You know, I think the more often we connect with the community, other nonprofits or not-for-profits, the potential of us working more closely with organizations like Alberta Tourism, Explore Edmonton, and which we do work now with as much as we are able to. I'm hoping that we can establish better relationships there and maybe look for some funding would be kind of nice. So if anybody's got any money they'd like to send us, that would be great.
Send your money.
Yeah, send money.
Well, I didn't transfer thing at the bottom.
Don't make the check out to me. Yesterday's auto gallery. But you know, just growing and changing the collection on a periodic basis so that it would be inviting for someone to come back, you know, every 3 to 6 months and see something different. Just evolving. You know, there's hard to say what things will be like in 5 years. Glenn Stenabau, again the owner, recently bought Rad Torque Raceway.
Oh, okay.
Which used to be Castrol, and people might remember it better from that. But clearly, he's a car enthusiast and is very tied into the community. And you know, my hope is that there's some good collaboration opportunities and synergies between, which there are, of course, car racing and muscle cars and that sort of thing. So there's some great opportunities there to put those two entities together, potentially at some point to be a bit more of a juggernaut, I suppose. Yeah.
Did he ever say why it was titled Yesterday's Auto Gallery? Just out of curiosity.
That's a good question. You know, I'm going to have to ask him that one of these days and see what he says. He'll probably
Please
just look at
email
me
me
like
after.
I'm nuts. But, well,
you can blame me. You can say
okay,
it was this girl that interviewed me. She
totally
was...
asked me this question I didn't know the answer to. I'm not sure. One thing I can tell you, Sylv's Diner was named after Glenn's wife who passed away a few years back. And her name was Sylvia, so Sylv's. And so there is something about some of the names in here that really means something like that. Yesterday's, I suppose, is about things from yesterday's. Yesterdays? Is that anyway? Yeah.
Like in the past.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate
And then,
that.
of course,
Yeah.
last question. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be specific to the gallery or anything,
Yeah.
but what is the best piece of advice you've received throughout your life?
Oh boy.
No pressure.
No pressure. Best advice. I've had so much great advice that I've never listened to.
That's how you know it's really good, is when you don't listen to it.
Yeah. my mother was an inspiration to me. I was raised by my mom and my sister. I wasn't raised by my sister, but I grew up with two women, and a lot of the way I think I am is based on that fact. And you know, my mom my mother was a minister, and some of the things she would say, of course, might have some kind of reference to biblical things. And one thing she used to always say to me was, treat others as you would like them to treat you. And whether that's respect or kindness or love or empathy or whatever that would be. And I think that advice is sound for anybody to, you know, treat others with the same kind of respect that you would like to get. And if you feel yourself doing something that might be belittling to somebody else or whatever that may be, is that you might just think, how would I feel if I was on the other end of it? Yeah. I'm not sure what that has to do with a museum or a gallery, but whatever.
No, but I think that's great advice
Yeah.
that maybe some people need to hear.
Yeah.
So
There you go.
thank you very
I
much.
may not be religious, but I might be a little spiritual.
Yeah. Here we are, still at yesterday's auto gallery with Rick Statt, master mechanic. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
So, we'll start with you just telling us a bit about yourself.
Well, I've been in mechanics for a long time, obviously. I was in high school. Before I was in high school, I was working, doing brakes and small work, oil changes and things on my dad's gravel driveway, and to make a little money on the side, and that was 14. And I bought my first car when I was 14. I bought it from a gas station for $25 because they didn't know how to get it running, so they gave up on it. So I bought it, and it had 1,000 things wrong with it. And it taught me a lot about cars, because it was about 4 months before I got the car running, but I did get it running. And then I had to scrounge the neighborhood and scrap yards for car parts to keep it repaired. It was a 48 Dodge. Yeah. So I've kind of learned a lot on it. And I think I got interested in cars when I was, I must probably about 7, 8 years old probably. We were on a trip to see my grandfather in Vancouver as a family. And the car broke down. And I was disappointed, obviously. I wanted to see my grandfather. And my dad said, we can't go any farther. I said, why not? We broke a rod. I said, well, get another one. No, he said, it's not that easy. And my dad was quite aggravated anyways, because the trip was over and now you had to deal with a dead car, you know, and no money to repair it. We ended up buying another car instead. But that always bothered me, that I couldn't, what is this broken rod thing? Just get another rod from somebody else. I pictured just and when you see the mechanics of it, obviously you can't just throw a part in like that. So, and because I was so disappointed, I think that's why I wanted to learn. Where does the connecting rod go? Oh yeah, I see. It's inside the engine. So first you have to get the engine out, take the engine apart,
Oh my goodness.
get the connecting rod off of it. Yeah. So I think that's kind of what I started out doing. And then in high school, my parents couldn't afford to send me to tech. So the instructor of the auto class in high school, I moved all my classes around in Saskatchewan when I went to high school. 9, 10, 11, and 12 were considered high school, and the rest were grade school. And my tech, the guy that ran the shop, we had a numerous bunch of kids in the class, but he told my parents, if you can't afford to send him to tech to get his license, I'll pay for it. He was that convinced that I should be a mechanic. Yeah, he was a great guy. So that's kind of how I got started in the business anyway. And eventually got my license, became a journeyman mechanic, and I needed it because at that time especially, as I got into, I was working, I've got a number of jobs, but I left Saskatchewan after having a job at a grain auger company, Secundiac grain augers. And I worked when I was about 14 I was working at an amusement park, running the amusement rides. Yeah, my favorite was the little miniature train that we had because I get to blow the whistle.
Aw.
Yeah, so I worked there for pocket money while I was in school. And then eventually I ended up getting my journeyman, get my license. And at that time I had a fleet of tow trucks. I had 15 tow trucks at that time.
Oh, wow.
It was called Dr. Hook. That's what we called it, believe it or not. There's a story that goes with that too. But yeah, that was I thought I was going to be like a great prince coming in on the white horse, saving some poor damsels with a broken car. Well, it didn't work out like that at all.
Oh, no.
People, when their car broke down, were plenty mad. They weren't very nice at all, and they already had a plan of where they're going to go before they even phoned for the tow truck, so it wasn't that big of a money-making deal. But I did need to keep my own fleet running, and from there, eventually, we went into the high-performance car, building engines for high-performance cars, and we went into circle track racing. We did a gasoline-powered circle track car. Then we went to a alcohol-powered circle track. It was a level up. They call it NASCAR now. NASCAR has about 9 levels of car races. And the better you are, the higher you go. But this was a basement kind of a deal. But we had fun at it, but it was a dirt track car, and I never had any fun because every time we went to an asphalt track with a crew, we had to change all the panhard bars and the gearing ratio for the asphalt racing. And then the next weekend or the next time there was an event, we were on dirt again, so we had to tear all the parts back out. And the other thing was I hated having a dirty car. And whenever I worked on the car, I wanted to always have it nice and clean on the dirt track. And most of the guys on the dirt track would do what they could to damage your car as much as you can. So I really didn't like racing dirt track. And we weren't really good anyways, and so eventually I wanted to go to drag racing because the cars were clean. It's a quarter mile and you have your own lane. I thought you could stay away from me in my lane. So that's what we did. We had some fun doing that. We ended up winning the world finals in a nitromethane car, 8,000 horsepower nitromethane car.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Congrats.
We just got out of that about 5 years ago. And my crew is still going, but they've changed the car to a 1,000 horsepower dragster. And as interesting as that is, when you're running nitromethane, which is the queen of the hill, it's hard to go down to a 1,000 horsepower dragster. So, Well, my racing career has been around for a long time. I finally did manage to be able to retire because I had a lot of physical problems, not mental problems, but physical problems. And my doctor and post and surgeon was always after me. You got to stop what you're doing. You can't be lifting and pushing and turning, and that was my job. The surgeon, I had 5 arteries done, and the cardiac surgeon told me, this is the point in your life, you're going to have to start going to work an hour after the shop opens and go home an hour early before the shop closes, because those are the 2 most, the highest stress points of the day. So I want you to avoid that. And I don't want you working with your arms over your head or pushing or pulling. I said, that's my job. I own the business. I'm not going to not open whenever I got there to open. That was open. There isn't such thing as closing late or opening early. This just didn't work. So, yeah, so I've had a quite enlightened career. I finally got a chance to retire because of I had a major surgery last year. Was 7-hour surgery of my hernias from all the things I hurt myself doing all those years, and lifting and pushing. So, but I'm here. I'm still going. It's a sign of really good doctors.
Yeah, and you enjoyed all the things that you got to do.
I love cars. Yeah, I'm what they call an engine specialist now. So that cars now are getting pretty complex, I should say, and with the electronics wheedling the way in. I remember in the 70s when I was working as a mechanic, and all the manufacturers were going to electronic for the ignition system. There's ignition and fuel. That's what makes these things run. And I thought, why are they doing that? There's nothing wrong with the existing system. That was called points in those days. little contact point. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you do the service and maintenance on it, it's great. You could even set the points when the engine was running. I thought it was wonderful. And they went to this stupid electronic system, and it was nothing but headaches because the computers a computer has to have, a temperature between like Fahrenheit 68 to 72. And no vibration. Well, there's no such thing as a car where it's at that temperature constantly and no vibration. So electronics, by the time they got all the bugs out of the system, it's very good now, but it still has its issues. But at that time, and everything was going over from gas carburetors sitting on top of them. Because I'd mastered how to fix all that stuff already, and then they go changing everything. Now you got to learn it all over again. So the carburetors had gone to fuel injection systems, and then they started putting in superchargers and turbos, and it's getting more and more complex while you're trying to swim up a fall. It's pretty tough to do, but I learned a lot through them all. And now, the times of these cars here that you see so many of these old cars, they're like antiques to everybody else. To me, I remember when these cars were new. And I thought, why are they doing this? They just got better and better. Now you've got, really reliable, great vehicles. Fuel injection has just made it all much better on gas, better on emissions. That's what you're chasing all the time. And there's answers to that. They could do better, but the cars would have to be much more expensive in order to make the gasoline ones be emission. And then now they've gone to electric cars, so we've had to learn quite a bit about that too. But the electrics has its benefits, but I think in time they're going to have longer usage times. You could say your battery, you charge them up, you're supposed to get 400 kilometers out of an electric charge. Not a hybrid, but just a battery-powered car, electric car. It's supposed to get 400 kilometers, but they don't tell you the part in the winter time. You probably get about 250 because the batteries are cold. They just can't keep their charge. And so there's issues. Eventually they're going to get everything better. And right now the battery systems are giant and very expensive. $10,000 or $15,000 to replace the battery. Well, you're not going to do that on a $15,000 car.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of scrap from the system too. They still need brakes. They still need tires. They still need heaters not working and radio and electronic stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm learning that too, but it's kind of caught up to me and going past me again because I have not working in the trade. But when I came to these engines, people are amazed. Wow, you really know this stuff. Yeah, that was my bread and butter. I learned,
Yeah.
This engine we're sitting with is a 1957 engine block. The other system over there is in the 70s. That other black engine down there is in the 70s, and which is the next generation of these. And this engine over here is actually in the 90s. They're all what they call small block Chevrolets. They came in 1955, and they still build them. The new version is over there with aluminum cylinder heads and electric fuel injection, computers, and so it's very interesting. I don't know where it's going to go after I'm gone, that's for sure. But I suspect hybrids seems to be the best for commuters. If you're going to drive to and from work every day, and the way the cities are now, everybody wants to live out in the country and have a 1-hour drive to work every morning. I think the electric or hybrids are the way to go because you can have your car to go back and forth to work. You never have to put gas in your car, which is what one of my neighbors said. His wife loves his electric car. He has a Tesla. And he said, why do you like it so much? And she said, because I don't have to get that smelly gas all over my shoes and my hands when I'm filling the tank. She tried to find garages that would fill for her. Well, that's dying off too. You got to fill your own fuel. But it gives you 400 kilometer, once the battery's charged, as long as you've got a place to plug in at work and a place to plug in at home, you'll never put gas in it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But the problem is, if you want to take your family and go to Vancouver for a holiday, like we did when the rod broke, the electric car won't go that far. So you can stop at all the Tesla will show you on the dash where every charging station is.
Oh, that's cool.
But you can't stop in the middle of your holidays to spend 10 hours charging your battery up. And there's no way to exchange it. When electric cars first came in, I was told that the big three, the Chrysler, Chevrolet, and Ford, General Motors and Ford, were going to make one battery. And it would be like you could pull it out of the side of the car and put in a new one. And the batteries would all be owned by the government. So that when a battery gets old, the government gives you a new one for every garage. So they would just charge you, say, $150 to exchange your battery. And you take the old one, they charge it up, put it in the next car. All using the same voltage. And I thought, that's pretty smart, because then you could go to Vancouver, stop, go to the SO, they take out your battery, put in a new one, away you go. It's real simple. That's not at all the way it is now. Batteries are all made up out of cells, and you have to take the body off the car to get to the batteries, and the battery takes a forklift to lift out of there. Like, wait a minute. And they're all doing their own thing when it comes to electric batteries. I thought you should be able to put a Toyota battery in a GM car. Why not? Because if the government owned them, if you want to have electric cars, that sort of made sense to me, but it's not going that way, unfortunately. So I think if you can drive back and forth to work every day, and all you have to do is plug a cord in the wall. And lots of the shopping malls have them too. I don't know why. You're not going to have your car there for more than 4 hours. Well, I wouldn't. Maybe my wife would. She could probably charge when she's shopping. But going on a longer trip just doesn't work. A friend of mine that has a new Tesla, and I'm very interested in how they do that. The things he likes about it is when he gets in the car in the wintertime, the heat's already blowing. He doesn't have to warm up a half a tank of fuel to get his interior warm, because the heaters are electric. So you have heat immediately. Heated seat, heated dash, everything, you know. I thought, well, that's great. And the other thing was, the first time they thought, well, let's take this car to, this was just past winter, let's go to Red Deer. They went to Red Deer and had some lunch and, I don't know, did something else. And coming back, they had all these warning lights coming on. It's supposed to be 400 kilometers. Well, Red Deer's only about 150 or 200. And he was giving them, he told them to start shutting down some of your electrical stuff because you're running down on distance. He said they just made it home, and he said I was sweating the last few miles and I'm going to be walking. He said every mile we got closer to home was a shorter walk. So he said we just kept going. And he said, I'm never doing that again. You just can't trust it. The batteries just couldn't take it in the cold. It was minus 25 or something, but still.
Oh my goodness.
But in a gas car, it would do it easily. You could burn off a whole tank of gas and not have to worry about it. But, well, that's kind of my career, what I'm interested in. And I had an opportunity, one of my customers, who's a Mopar guy, which means Dodge Chrysler products are called Mopars, and his motto is no cars, Mopar or no car. That was his attitude. His name's Glenn, and he owns the museum here, and he owns the racetrack in Edmonton here. And he's just a terrific person. He was one of my best customers, and Glenn and I had a really good friendship. And I know about his son-in-law, I know his wife, I knew, the whole family, the whole family, as they say. And Glenn was just a terrific customer, just a wonderful guy. We were very good friends, and a lot of these cars that were here, when Glenn would buy a car, it would run by me and see what I thought we should do with it. Any mechanical problems he had with his collection of cars, I'd be the first guy he would go to. So I got to know Glenn very well, and when I retired, it wasn't too far after Glenn got into this museum thing, and so he got a hold of me. He told me he was interested in buying the racetrack out here. I knew he had the museum, which is terrific, and we had a long chat about the racetrack, and he made the decision to go ahead and buy the racetrack. And I think he's well loved out there, that's for sure, because as a 30-year drag racer at that same track for the most part. We raced all over Canada, and the Canadian Nationals was always in Cayuga, and we would haul the car all the way down there to race it. And we had it for car shows. Our big sponsor was Castro.
Wow.
Yeah, so we had a big sponsor, and I don't know if you know about racing, but we got to know John Force, which is a famous guy.
Cool.
He was kind of a used parts guy. We were the bottom feeders, so we'd take all his parts. You can imagine these hobby Canadians bringing a top fuel funny car to a race at the American Hot Rod Association in the World Finals, and we show up. We're a bunch of volunteers, and I thought we don't have too much to worry about these guys. And we're bottom feeders. Everything we had was used parts, but we got it together, figured out how to make it work. And when we won the World Finals in Spokane, that was 2001. There was a whole lot of people getting really mad, like, what's the deal here? We're spending millions of dollars. And they said, well, are you going to stick around for the ceremonies? We said, no, that was Sunday night. We said, we got to start packing up the trailer because we get home. They said, why? Why are you in such a hurry? I said, because we all have jobs. And they're like, what? Because these other guys are using the racing their sponsors would pay their wages.
Yeah.
So they could travel all over. We didn't have that luxury. So. Yeah, a bunch of bottom feeders winning the World Finals. It was, in a way, it was pretty happy for everybody, but a whole lot of them were pretty mad. One of them, the guy we defeated in the final pass, I remember, when he came back, one of his crew guys picked him up in a golf cart at the top end of the track after the race was over, and he had lost. He got second place. He came back to his car, and they had given him a can of beer, so he had calmed down, and he threw the can of beer on the side of his $2 million Prevost motorhome.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and in the morning he came over and apologized. All right, just before we left, he came and apologized. But that's not sportsmanship.
No.
No, but
That's why he didn't win. Sorry.
I was happy. You're on the trailer and you're one of the winners, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, and I had an opportunity to come. I knew Glenn well, and he asked me if I'd take on this program of helping the other mechanics. We rotated kind of between the group. We have a really good, one of the gals is a licensed mechanic. She owns her own shop, Denise, and she's really good. All the guys are really great as far as journeymen. Most of us are retired, so we got that time on our hands. I enjoy talking to the kids. It's interesting. We have classes of, I think it's one class is like 12 to 17. Another one we've had adult classes. We've had ladies classes. And one of the ladies, after we did a ladies class, she came back to see the museum again. And what? She said, I just love, well, I learned about your cars. And I said, oh, we appreciate that. She said, my husband and I always, every time those stupid car shows come on TV and they're talking about engines and pistons, and she said, well, my husband always said, just change that. We don't want to watch that. But she said, after I went through the course here, she said, now I know what it is. And her husband says, just shut that off. She goes, no, they're talking about pistons and crankshafts. Because now she knows what it is, so she has an interest in it, yeah. And one little guy, about 12-year-old guy, said, now that you know this, how an engine goes together, what are you going to do with that? He said, I'm going to go home and take my dad's Volvo engine apart. I said, no, you better ask your dad first.
Happy Father's Day.
So we have some really interesting people on. One of the little kids that I didn't think was listening all that much. What our program is to have Saturdays from 1 to 5. We bring the kids in. It's a 4-hour program. And we strip the engines down, completely down. And the following weekend, when you come back, they have to reassemble and torque all the parts back together in the engine. So they get to know the whole thing pretty good. But we talk about the engine needs to have cooling. It's not just the mechanical pistons and rods that are in it. The engine has to be cooled. And we discuss how the water system cools it. We actually show them cooling ports in the engine block and in the heads. And the other thing is lubrication. Like, it's got oil in the bottom, but what does it do, you know? So they get a pretty good lesson about it. And when you get to show all the parts, piston rings and connecting rods and all that part, it's very interesting to these kids, you know. They start, and they give out a little diploma, like a congratulations thanks to these kids, and some of them are just great. It's really great to talk to these people, and a lot of them are really invested mentally into it. Once they get going on it, it's really interesting to see how the engineering, especially on this old girl, this is a 57. They first built these engines in 1955. And this one has 1955 components in it. To the museum, it's just some old orange engine. To me, that's a 57 engine with a 265 crankshaft in it. And when I first saw it, I knew what that engine was. It's very rare. somebody somewhere has a 57 Nomad or a convertible or some special, but can't find the right engine for it. I mean, you could take one of those engines, paint it orange and stuff it in there. Who's going to know, right? But in this world, these cars have to be perfect. The carburetor date code when the carburetor was made has to be before the engine was built, because you can't have a carburetor after your engine's built, right? So all the dates on these things, all the casting numbers, all have to line up. So when you get to the engine, it's critical. And when I saw this motor, I thought this is probably this is a 283. And I thought there's probably more than 283 parts in it. It's old. So it has some 265 parts in it. That's cubic inch. Now they measure everything in liters, which is the other thing in my career. I learned everything is in inches and foot-pounds. That's not the way it is now. It's Newton meters and metrics. And so I had a whole toolbox full of what I like to call SAE sockets, which is inches. And then they went to the metric system, and the Americans didn't. So some of the parts on these cars aren't made in Canada. They're made in the States, and they ship maybe the engine or the transmission to Canada. So if you have a car you have to fix, it may not be all metrics. It may be made in the States, you're going to have inches stuff to work with. So you end up with basically two toolbox. I got about 150 sockets, so you have the right one. That, you know, it's tough for a new mechanic. There is some consideration of the government. You can write off the costs of the tools you need to be a first-year mechanic. But it's a tough market. There's a lot of learning to do. And I can see what's going to happen, I think, in the automotive market. I think we already have actually, the dealerships have what they call a guy that his job is to find out what the electronic problems are. A check engine light comes on. Most people are terrified this thing's going to quit on me. It doesn't necessarily mean that. The engine light coming on means you're not meeting emissions, which can be a fairly serious problem, but it might be just a loose gas cap, because that can turn the light on too. There's probably 85 things that can turn the light on, so it just means you're not meeting emissions.
They should have different
And
lights.
now all the dealerships have a guy that they call the drivability guy. And he takes the scanner that's made to read like a GM car. You'd have the scanner for the GM car. The Ford dealerships have the scanner for the Ford cars. In the garage like I had, it was a high-performance shop. We worked on anything, BMWs, Volkswagens, and we had scanner. Couldn't believe it. We had to have a very expensive system to have snap-on tools, and being able to plug into any, they call it HLDL, it's a connector underneath the dash. At the assembly line, they can plug into it, and it'll tell it where it's happy and where it isn't happy. It gives you some inkling of where to go to. Why is the light on? It'll tell us why, which is a whole other program. But the dealerships now are starting to have relying heavily on a guy that can read the scanner and knows the electronic parts of it and how they work. He's the drivability guy, and when he comes back from a road test, he has a pretty good idea this code light is on and this is what it is. He gives it to a mechanic to actually do the work. The drivability guy at the end of when the mechanic's done with it, said, yeah, I fixed it. The drivability guy of the dealership goes for a drive, makes sure the light's off, everything's happy, and he can reprogram it that it's now good to go back into service. And that's what he does. But then there's the guys in the shop. They have the sockets and the wrenches and the impact guns, and they have a pretty good knowledge of how the electronic systems work. But one mechanic at one time, when you came to a garage, they had to be able to fix everything. They did carburetors, and I mean, when I first got in the trade, there was no such thing as put on a rebuilt alternator, put on a rebuilt starter motor. There wasn't any. You took it off, you took it apart, you put the armature on a growler. You wouldn't understand what that is, but it tells you the armature's good. Put some brushes in, cut back the mica, and fix the alternator and put it on, or fix the starter. Fuel pumps. You take the fuel pump off and you go get a kit to service it. It's got the diaphragms and the springs, and now it's elevated to, yeah, your alternator's bad, so we're going to put another one on. Okay, it's a lot more different. Changes. Cars have come better and better, no doubt about it, but they're more and more expensive too, and the expensive makes them, you have to have very good mechanics. And even if your drivability guy doesn't know what he's doing, the whole shop's going to lose traction, because it's critical that that guy has a good knowledge of what's going on. And electronics is a funny field. It really is.
What advice would you have for aspiring mechanics?
I think it's a good trade. And I always wondered why you had to have good math marks and good, you have to understand how mechanical things work to some degree. But I mean, you maybe once you've gone to tech and you don't want to get all dirty, you want to wear a nice shop coat, you could be the drivability guy. But if once you get good at that, why not, And then there's people that don't want to learn that part. I even know mechanics, they're licensed mechanics, and they say, I never got bothered taking classes at NATE and all that to update, to understand the electronics of it. And I know the electronics, I know ECMs, I know computers, and I know how the sensors work. And when you know that, and you have a failure in a component, you know immediately probably what it is. You can use a volt, they call it a digital volt-o-meter. You go in there and you can check the amps, you can check the volts, you know where you should have 12 volts and where you should have 5 volts. And when a component fails, you can go in, you're using an electronic thing, a voltmeter, to find the problem and fix it. That's not the way it used to be. It was a hammer and a bunch of wrenches at one time. Crawl underneath and change some parts, I mean, still need to do that, but I think the field is very, very technical now, and you have to have some understanding of what a capacitor is, what a transistor does, all that kind of stuff. There's so much electronics to it. You almost better off with a TV tech than, in fact, working on the car, because there's so much electronics in it. But that's what makes them so reliable. When I got in the trade, nobody went more than 60,000 miles. That would be 100,000 kilometers. That car was pretty much done. And at 100, at 100,000 miles, the parts would be so wore out like these, they had to be serviced at least twice a year. You had to have oil changes and at points we talked about. All of that stuff there was a fair bit of service, but it was reliable in its day. But now we turn the key and drive it for 400,000 kilometers, and even then they complain. What do you mean the head gasket's gone? It's only got 400,000 kilometers. You think it's going to last forever? And you don't think, how many miles have you traveled? You've gone half around the world at the equator in miles, a poor old car. But people are like, I don't have to put any more money in it. Well, and it's going to be expensive, You have to pay for reliability. Cars are very reliable now. I have a good feeling about them, but I'm not making a big issue about getting back into the field, because physically my days are done, and I should be trying to relax. But I took on a job working on what? Same old thing I started out with,
But hopefully it's a more relaxed setting.
It is, yeah. I actually enjoy the classes are real. The people are a bunch of characters. And I was saying, I had a little guy there, and I put up a chart and I stock cuts. When I start out, I say all of these engines are 4-stroke motors, and you can tell they're going, I don't know what that is. So I would put a chart up and I would explain, this is how 4 strokes work. And one little guy, after the first week of work, and he came in, we were going to start assembling it. I got a group together of all 20 of them. Can anybody explain to me what a 4-stroke engine is? And this little guy, I don't know, he's probably 8 or 10 or something. Yeah, I can tell you. I said, go ahead. He went through that like he had memorized it. I'm telling you, it was perfect. I said, and I wear a VIP necklace, so I said, you better wear this, because I sure didn't know that when I was his age, that's for sure. So we go carefully through that, and when you understand how the 4-stroke works, it's critical in the beginning, and then people are, I kind of understand what's doing, but by the time you get done disassembling the engine, how the pistons work, how the rings seal the pistons and the whole thing, the mechanical part kind of clicks, and they think, that's right, it's cool, we got it all apart. Now we're going to put it together. So the following week they come back, and we have to put all the parts back in, show them how to set everything, how to torque everything, and that's a different And two, I've had some of the boys can't tighten the torque heavy enough because the torque wrench is at 60 foot-pound. And I tell them, if you don't get going, I'm going to get one of the girls to do it. No, I can do it. It's funny they can find a way. Yeah, we really enjoy it. I love it. So
That's awesome.
I've got, yeah.
Then last question.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best piece of advice you've received throughout your life? It doesn't have to be specific to mechanics or anything like that.
Well, I think all my life, and when it spilled off into my garage business, which is probably the reason I never got rich, but honesty. You know, when you're working on a car and you think, oh, I made a mistake, I broke something, you could pull the phone to the customer and say, you know, we just noticed this other thing is broken too. I can't do that. You know, and sometimes you have some bad news, you have to say, I'm sorry. Like I had a lot of single moms in my business, and I didn't want to charge them anything, but I had to survive because I had 4 kids at home to feed. And now I've got 11 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren because of my hard work, and yeah. But it's just one of those things. Honesty, I think, is no matter where you are, it gives you integrity. You know, and people, a lot of my customers weren't very happy when I had bad news for them, but you got to straight shoot from the hip. You know, and sometimes it's hard to take a deep breath and tell them the truth. They're going to be mad and call you names, but at the end of the day, and I've had other mechanics say, what are we going to tell them, the customer? We're going to tell them the truth. Mm-hmm. You know, don't try and hide stuff. Sooner or later it gets uncovered and you look like an idiot. You're better off to, you know, if something goes bad, you've got to be honest, and that spins over into your life, you know. And I had lots of customers that when I sold my business, I sold it. The people that bought it got a really good clientele, but didn't take very long. Took them 2 years to go out of business, so I know what they weren't doing, you know. And I mean, you can make a lot of money. I knew a lot of mechanics in other garages that we had a lot of. It's a small community, and it's like an elephant rolls over at night. Everybody knows about it. So, and a lot of the mechanics would have fewer. A lot of the shops would have fewer mechanics and more hoists, and these guys have, you know, boats and you know, they had motor homes and all kinds of. They go to New Phoenix and to Las Vegas, and I'm thinking I can't even afford to feed my kids from the business. And I worked really hard for a number of years. We were in business for 34 years in the auto business, auto repair business. And in that at the same time, we were drag racing for over 20 years, and that followed about a 13 or 14 year experience of running a fleet of tow trucks, which keeps you working 24/7. And when the weather gets bad, the phone starts ringing. That's just how it works. So if you have a nice sunny Saturday of +10 or something, phone doesn't ring. But as soon as it goes to -40 and a wind and everybody's like, whoa, I'm staying home tonight, tow trucks are out there. You know, they're running into things and quitting. We did a lot of accident work, AMA work. So, yeah. But honesty is the secret. It's not always easy. In fact, I think most of the time it's difficult to be really honest with people, but sometimes you just got to tell them the truth. And you run into people in your business, in your life, and they tell you the truth. Like when I go to a doctor or a surgeon, I want the truth. Mm-hmm. And they're very good about it. They don't want, they could easily say, you'll be all right for another 20 years. Maybe not. You know, you don't know that. But it's always honest. It's hard, I think, sometimes. It's the easy way. You got a 99% chance nobody's ever going to find out. Doesn't matter. I don't work like that. I have to be honest with them. And I think it's with my kids. They've all got kids now, so they know how hard it is. And it's the same. You have to be honest with your kids. Sometimes you want to just make it easy for them. That's not the way to go. You have to be true, I think. It's a rare commodity these days.
Yeah, that's very true.
You know.
But it's good advice.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I think.
Thank you very much for chatting with us.
Oh, no problem. Glad to bring it out. I love cars. I can't get it out of my system, so I guess I'm going to take it with me. I love it, really.
chatting with volunteer Randy Stiles.
That's me.
How are you doing?
Good.
Awesome. So we'll start with you just telling us a bit about yourself.
Oh, I'm old and decrepit. I'm a volunteer here. And that's about it.
Cool.
You know,
Yeah.
mostly from Edmonton, lived in Saskatchewan for a while, re-immigrated back to Edmonton, and not much else to say.
What took you to Saskatchewan, if you don't mind me asking?
I was in the aviation business,
Oh, okay.
so I ended up flying in northern Saskatchewan for a couple of years, and did that for a while, and came back here, flew a couple of years out of here. Then I decided I was going to get into the oil and gas business.
Gotcha.
So that's what I did until I got old and decrepit and retired.
And now you have fun and volunteer?
Yeah. Volunteering's lots of fun here because most of the people who come here are car people, and they like to reminisce about their early years because they all used to have old cars like this.
What made you want to start volunteering?
I'd heard about the place and I came in, did a tour, talked to Ted, and he said they were looking for volunteers. And plus I grew up with a lot of this automotive history.
Do you have a favorite car in the gallery?
All of them. All the cars in here, every one of them. Our oldest car, 1926. Every car here has a story. So you can go to 1926 with a Model T, or you can go talk about a Superbird that'll do 200 miles an hour.
Do you have a favorite story that you've heard?
Well, the fun story is the yellow Superbird. So they made those cars for the NASCAR racing circuit. And for the yellow one, they made 1,900 of those because NASCAR said you have to make them available to the public. Let me think. Plymouth wants to put 1,900 of these cars out to the general public that will do over 200 miles an hour. So when the car arrived here, we noticed that there's some paperwork up on the dashboard. Well, we went and looked at it, and it was one of the owners who in 1989, was driving that very car in West Virginia. And they had the audacity to give him a speeding ticket. 145 miles an hour in a 35 mile an hour zone. No, we don't know when he got out of jail or when the car got out of impound, but that's some of the history of that yellow car sitting there.
Wow.
And you think about that car, 1970. Think about that, it's 50 years ago. 200 miles an hour, available to the general public for $4,700.
Sounds like such a bad idea.
I'd take it.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of people would take it.
So that's when you say, well, which car do you like? Every one of them has a story. And they're all good stories. And then a lot of the people who come in here, oh, I had one of those, and they'll tell you a story about it when they had something like that.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it very enjoyable, something to do. Keeps me out of jail.
Why, otherwise you would be doing 145 miles an hour in a 35 mile an hour zone.
Well, that car is capable of 200.
That's crazy. Have you ever driven that fast?
Not quite.
Almost there?
Yep.
What speed?
About 100, well, on what kind of vehicle?
Oh,
So my wife and I have had Mustangs.
oh wow.
And the 2005 Mustang, or was it 15? I forget. It would do about 145, and we had it up to 130.
Oh my goodness.
but I did 135 in a motorcycle one time.
Wow.
So once upon a time, Yamaha rented the complex over in the south side there to display all their stuff, pianos, guitars, and motorcycles. And my wife and I went there and they had this motorcycle. And I'm talking to the guy and I says, that is the ugliest motorcycle I have ever seen. What is it? It's a Yamaha VMAX. Oh, okay, fine. So in my oil patch days, I was out in the thriving metropolis of Redwater, Alberta, and there's a sports shop there. And I was in there looking at motorcycles. And I said, there's one of the ugliest motorcycles I've ever seen. And the guy says, well, have you ever driven one? Well, no. Well, here, go try it out. So it had a 5-speed transmission. At 135, you hit top gear, and it pulled so hard, your arms just about came off.
Oh my gosh.
That's how fast a Yamaha VMAX was in the day. Wow. 10 days later, I owned one.
Was that not terrifying?
No. When you drive a motorcycle, once you get past about 80 miles an hour, there is no more impression of speed.
Okay.
So you can't tell until you want to stop. Mm-hmm. Then you take up flying lessons. So anyways, that's part of my misspent youth.
Misspent? Why do you say that?
Well, you know, you always reflect back and say, well, what could I have done better? How could I have been smarter? No hope. But anyways, it's when you look at, well, in some ways, was it misspent? Cars, airplanes.
Yeah. It sounds like you've lived a wild life. I mean,
No, not the wild, it's hard work.
yeah.
And, you know, in my flying days, here's something for you. I ended up working for a regional airline called Norcan Air in Saskatchewan. Only those who dare fly Norcan Air. And I ended up flying a de Havilland Beaver, which was Canadian built, Canadian designed and everything. It was a really good airplane. The only thing is, it was serial number 1. It was the first one they ever built in 1947. And it is still alive and well today in the Aviation Museum in Ottawa.
Oh my goodness, that's so cool.
And it's exactly the way I left it.
Aw,
Same paint, everything.
that's so cool. Have
So-
you gone to see it since it's been in the museum?
Yeah,
Yeah?
I got pictures of me standing beside
Aw.
it. I had my time in it certified by the chief pilot, you know, stamped. And on the passenger side, there's a little brass plaque up there. And it says, serial number 1.
Aw, that's so cute.
So it goes to prove that anything built in Canada is built to last a long time.
Yeah.
So we're quite proud of Canadian stuff. So that's part of my misspent youth, depending on,
Or well spent youth,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
by the sounds of it.
yeah. We actually have one here. If you go down that aisle, it's a silver 2005 Mustang, silver, convertible.
Oh, wow.
And they are contemplating a raffle.
Really? Oh
So
my
keep an
goodness,
eye
that's
on the
crazy.
website because it would look good on you.
For anyone wanting to visit the museum, what is something you think that they should know?
That's a very good question. What do you want from the museum is the answer, because we start out at 1926 and we go up to 1980. So in that time frame, there's something for everybody. And bring an appetite because you have Sylvie's.
And everything looked so good. There's
Yeah.
no people in here right now, but
Yeah. So, and the other thing is the history on some of these vehicles that are here, like the yellow car. They only made 1,900 of those, and they only made them for 2 years. Then NASCAR said, can't race those anymore. If you look at that red car just out there, that is a Shelby. So that is a Mustang that was shipped to Shelby when they had his office in Inglewood, which is part of Los Angeles. So they would ship that car there, and then they would Shelbyize it. So all the stuff that you see, the scoops and the little stuff, that's all put on by Carroll Shelby.
Wow.
There's a blue Mustang down there. So it is a Shelby Super Snake, designed by Shelby, and they've since moved to Las Vegas, right? So the story goes, the Super Snake, which is 80% carbon fiber body, Shelby wheels, Shelby brakes, all this sort of stuff. The government, not to pick on them, said, that's not a Mustang anymore, that's a Shelby. So give us 4 of them to run into a brick wall to see how safe they are. Well, Mr. Shelby didn't think that was a good idea. So what he did is he set up 3 companies in Canada. One in Ontario, another one in Calgary, and one here. So that Shelby Super Snake that you see there was built in Fort Saskatchewan,
Oh, wow.
the whole car. And it is licensed, recognized worldwide as a Shelby Super Snake.
Oh, my goodness.
See, so all these cars have stories to them that you wouldn't expect. The car will also do 205 miles an hour. Wow. The way it sits.
So they all go fast.
Yeah, some of them go fast. So anyways, but that's why when people say, well, why should I come here? All of these cars have history, and some of that history pertains to right here. Like Fort Saskatchewan, you're building cars out there,
Yeah.
or Model Ts that have history. And the other thing is, the province we live in, when you really think about it, as much as they like to extol transport, you have to have a car here. So people have cars, some good, some bad, some indifferent. And some cars, like this one. This is a
very cool
Nash
car.
Metropolitan, but you know what it really is? It's an Austin. It was built in England,
Oh, wow.
but it was sold in North America by Nash. So it's a Nash Metropolitan.
It's a pretty color.
Everybody likes it.
For good reason, I think.
Yeah, so there. So that's,
And then last question. It doesn't have to pertain to the gallery or anything
Okay.
or volunteering, but what would you say is the best piece of advice you've received throughout your life?
that's a very good question. That's a really good question. I don't know. Work hard. Don't be afraid to work hard, and be honest. And whatever you do, put all your effort into it, because people can tell. If you really are into something, enthused about it, people can tell. So when you look at currently some of the leaders, Jobs, the guy who did, which one did he did? He did Apple, Stephen Jobs. Totally dedicated to what he was doing. Difficult to work with, but look what he did. Apple revolutionized the world
Yeah.
when you think about it. So when you look at a lot of the leaders of industry today, one of the common things you see is how dedicated they are. There is no time clock for those guys. No time clock for me either, other than it's running out. So there,
Awesome.
that was a good question.
Thank you.
Oh, and the other thing is you interviewed one of the best mechanics I have ever had the privilege to work with, was Rick.
He was so knowledgeable.
He has forgotten more than most people will ever know. And he knows secrets on all those engines. And they still make them the same way today. But if you don't know all those secrets, anyways, tremendous resource. A real nice guy to boot.
So if you ever want to learn about engines, hit up Rick.
Did we tell you about the engine program?
Rick spoke about the program, how you can come in and then take apart the engine and then put it back together. But if you wanted to add anything else, you totally can.
The most fun we had. So it's dedicated to father and son, right? Teenage. The best one was ladies only. So last year we had ladies only. So 14 to 70 was the age group.
Oh, wow.
The girls came in, we supply all the tools, and of course each engine's got a governor or mentor. Well, they took those engines all apart, down to nothing. Pistons here, valves there, everything. That was Saturday from 1 till 4. So we figured, okay, next Saturday, guess what? You come back in and
You rebuild it.
we never thought we'd see them again. Everyone showed up. Everyone. They put those engines all back together. No parts left over.
Wow.
Then we realized when they left, we have created monsters. They would go to the new car service center, pull in there and say, the lifter on number 2 bank's not getting enough oil. I want warranty. How do you know that? So it's a very good program and lots of fun.
We should do it one day.
Yeah, it's lots of fun. It's pardon for the summer, but come fall time, something to do in the winter. And the thing is, when you get somebody like Rick showing all of the stuff, all ICE engines, that's the current term, right? Internal combustion engines, right? They all work the same way, give or take. So it makes you extremely knowledgeable if something's making noise under the hood, or it won't start, or you want to buy a new car, like a Shelby Super Snake. Or you win, hopefully, our
The raffle, yeah.
the raffle.
You know, silver convertible.
So that's the story.
Well, thank you very much for sharing it with us.
Well, thank you for coming and spending the time here.
Hi everyone, we're back. We just finished up at
Yesterday's auto gallery.
I'm like, what? We just finished up. It was so fun. Everyone is extremely knowledgeable.
Yep.
And very like personable. Like we were sitting there chatting for so long with them, and it was like we learned so much. I loved it.
I think it's so cool how like unique cars were at the time, and just to see how colorful everything was, just very cool.
So much prettier.
Yeah.
So much cooler.
Yeah.
And going back to what Rochelle was saying, like everyone is so personable and so knowledgeable, and if you ask a question, they will answer it for you, and they are so willing to share and so kind and sweet, and it's just, and they're pretty funny too.
They actually all
Really
were so
funny.
funny. Like I was giggling behind the camera the whole time.
So definitely check it out. If you didn't know it was in Edmonton, now you do. Literally the largest in Canada, y'all.
So cool. I'm bringing my
get on
dad
that.
here. Like Bridget's bringing her dad here. Sahara's gonna bring her dad.
You could
here,
see us and our
like-
dads here. Like that's
Perfect.
exciting as well. So yeah, thanks everyone.